Okay, a riverboat can head 340 miles upriver. I signify it. I just take notes when I read. In 19 hours. But the return trip takes only 14 hours. So the return trip, it has to have the same distance and going down, and it takes 14 hours. Find the current of the river and find the speed of the riverboat in still water to the nearest tenth of a mile. I would like to give you some ideas here or discuss the problem, and then you will give me the system and then you can solve it. Okay, so here's the scenario. We are going from point A to point B, and this is against the river. Remember, against the river, against the wind, right? Which means what? My speed is diminished by the speed of the force or the force against me, right? So I can do 10, but it pushes me back 2, so I can only do 8, right? If it goes the other way, if it pushes me forward 2, then I'm doing 12, right? So in this case, we're going up or against the river, 340 miles. It takes us 19 hours. Now we come back from point B to point A, still 340 miles, but it takes us 14 hours. Why the difference in the time? Why do I need to go from point A to point B? Why do I need 19 hours to go from point A to point B and only 14 from coming back from B to A? Because of the river, the speed of the river, right? So this is the river. This is us in the boat. But this is the river. See, the two forces here are against each other. This one will diminish this one. In this case, this one will help this one. So in which situation are we faster in the water? In this situation or this situation? Of course, because we're getting help from the river, from the speed or the force of the river. Here, the river is against us, right? Good. So I'm going to denote this by x, which is the speed of the boat. And I'm going to denote, it doesn't matter really, you can choose any variables you want. And I'm going to call the speed of the river y. Since the problem or this war problem, the situation has how many variables? 2. How many equations will we have to write? 2. Okay, I'm ready when you are. Keep in mind that these two scenarios cannot be combined. This may happen today, and this may happen tomorrow. So you cannot combine and say, oh, the trip is 680 miles. No, 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 no. This is one thing, and this is a totally different situation. So can anyone come up with a relationship or an equation that signifies the first scenario or tells us what happens in the first scenario? Which equation of motion do we have to use? Uniform motion. As I mentioned before, that's not really possible because I can drive at 60 miles an hour without starting from 0 and getting to 60 miles an hour. So I need to accelerate before I get to 60, and then I can keep it steady at 60. And that will be that uniform motion portion. But we have to assume that in this case, there is no acceleration. In other words, it's a uniform motion. So, what is the equation for uniform motion? Exactly. Distance equals rate times time. This is the equation for uniform motion. And now we have to mimic that in our scenario 1 and in our scenario 2. So please tell me what you would write. Yes, in parentheses, x minus y times 19. Excellent. The actual speed is what the boat can do minus the force of the river times the time needed to complete the trip from A to B. Excellent. Okay, forget about the first scenario. Now we are coming back. What are we going to write? Of course. Times, that's it. Exactly. So let's take a moment and solve the system. I will try to divide both sides by 19 and divide both sides by 14, even if I get something that is not an integer, because then I will be able to add the equations and y goes away. However, you can distribute if that's better for you. You can eliminate one variable. It will be more difficult, though. .340 is not divisible by 19. You can leave it as a fraction and deal with it later. It does say we shouldn't expect nice numbers. It says to the nearest tenth of a mile. It shouldn't say that. It's incorrect because we're asked to find the speed. And it says find the speed of the river and the speed of the boat to the nearest tenth of a mile. Well, the speed is not measured in miles. It should have said mile per hour. Do we need more time on this? So if you go along with what I suggested, then you will have this. And then you will add them. And when I add these two equations, I get 2x, because y goes away, equals whatever that is. So 340 over 19 plus 340 over 14, and I have to divide both sides by 2. And I want to show you how to plug this in the graphing calculator and not have to worry about anything. But it's what I do have to worry about is how, oops, I forgot to take this out. They won't allow me to keep anything on the desktop. Everything gets erased all the time for new security. Okay, so when you put in the graphing calculator complex rational expressions, in other words, fractions at the top, and in this case just a number at the bottom, you have to put parentheses around everything you have at the top. The denominator is just one term, so you don't really need parentheses around 2, but you need parentheses around everything you have at the top. So left parenthesis, 340 divided by 19, and then plus 340 divided by 14. You close the parenthesis for the numerator, and then you divide by 2. And the answer is 21.09. And they 1 to the 10th. So I will say x approximately 21.1. And not miles, but what? Miles per hour. Okay. So that is my answer for x. Now I go back anywhere I want and determine y. So for example, I would like to then go back here. So I will say 340 over 14 equals x, which is 21.1 plus y. Therefore, y will be 340 over 14 minus 21.1. So I'm going to put this in the graphing calculator. Here's how I do it. Do not delete what you had already. So I will do 340 divided by 14, and then I will recall the previous answer. Minus second and previous answer, which is minus. So it will only consider the very last one. You cannot go back 3 steps if you have something else done. So then I will have the best approximation. So it's 3.2. So y equals 3.2 miles per hour. So it happens that in this situation, the speed of the river is 3.2 and the speed of the boat is 21.1. So 21.1 comma 3.2, I don't trust it, at least not yet. So I will go back and check both equations and multiply by 19 and see if I get 340. I will not get exactly 340, but because I know there is a rounding error. So with the graphing calculator, if you'd like to do that, so we have 21.1 minus 3.2. Of course, they are rounded. And I multiply by 19. And I will not get 340, right? Either a little bit above or a little bit below. And then I will check the other one, 21.1 and plus 3.2. And then I'll multiply by 14. Be careful if you don't put parentheses. You have to get the answer first. And you multiply by 14, and the answer should be close to 340. Up. Sorry. So I had 21.1 minus 3.2. I pressed enter and then multiplied, or I could have put it in parentheses. So parentheses 21.1 minus 3.2, and you multiply by 19. And you get a little bit over. Or you can recall the previous entry, change this into 14, and change your sign inside, or the operation symbol, and you get the same thing. So obviously this is indeed correct. Okay, let's look at the, yes, any questions? Any questions? Let's look at a mixture problem now. Or if you want, let's look at the deli first. Okay, 41. A deli charges $3.80 for a breakfast I'm taking notes. For 3 eggs and 4 strips of bacon. So I'm going to say 3 eggs and 4 y. They charge $2.75 for 2 eggs and 3 strips of bacon. Find the cost of each egg and the cost of each strip of bacon. So let's do that. Yes, Becky? Did you forget to divide by 2? That's your x, not your y. So that's your x. This is your x, not your y. No, you have to go back here with your x. This is x. You have to replace it here. Oh, here, yes, that's perfect. That's good. So then you have this minus 21.1, 340 over 14, minus 21.1. Careful. If you put a parenthesis, you have to repeat that parenthesis. No, you're multiplying to write that. So you have 340 over 14 minus 21.1 because you have to go into the other side, and that's how you get the 3.1. It's 3.2. You have a minor error in there. Yes, it is 3.2. Can anyone tell us what to write in this situation? So this is a system we're working on, right? And then let's look at a mixture problem, and then I think we should move on to chapter 9. And also review how to graph a piecewise defined function. We had plenty, but maybe we want to graph another one. Okay, so can anyone tell us what did you get rid of, or how did you think about this problem? Jackie, if you want to say something. Excellent, which means you eliminated x. Very good. So we have 6x plus 8y equals 7.6. Thank you. I was adding 6 to 1.6. Okay, and then negative 6x and minus 9y equals 825. Very good. Thank you very much. X is gone as predicted or as intended. So 25 plus 40. So I got minus 0.65, correct. So then y equals 65 cents, and y was for bacon. Okay. Again, we'll check at the end anyway, so I'm going to come back anywhere you want. So this is 2x plus 3 multiplied by 0.65 equals 2.75. So then 2x equals 2.75 minus 1.95. And then x equals, and I get 0, I get 8 divided by 2. So is this correct? And this is for each egg. So it appears that the solution is 0.40 comma 0.65. Is that correct? Is this what you got? Okay. Do I have to go back and check? Did you check? Does it work? So I don't waste our time here. Yes? You checked? Okay. So we have to check. So this is 0.4 and 0.65. 0.4, 0.65. We have to check, or we always check, because it's very easy to make a mistake. So 3 times 0.4 is 1.2. 1.2, and this 4 times 6, 24, 26. 2.6. Yes, that is correct. Now this is 0.8, and this is 3. That's 18 plus 15. Exactly. Thank you. And this is 5 and 7 and 2. Yes. So now I know that this must be it. There is no other solution. We always have to check. Do not believe the solution before you check, please. Okay, let's go back to one other acid type situation, 40, on page 302. Find the amount of a 6% acid solution and the amount of a 14% acid solution that should be combined to prepare 50 cubic centimeters of a 12% solution. So remember this scenario. We have an unknown number of cubic centimeters in a container in which I know the concentration is 6%. I have an unknown number in the second container of cubic centimeters, concentration 14%. I have a third container, empty, completely empty. I take the first 2 containers and empty them in the third container, and I mix them up. Right here, I'm looking inside. I have 50 cubic centimeters, and the concentration is 12. So let's think for a moment, and then I move on to chapter 8. To look at least the piecewise-defined function. And the word problem. Can anyone put us on the right track? Remember the scenario. Cubic centimeters plus cubic centimeters equals cubic centimeters. Consistent equation. Excellent. Second one. .06x. What is .06x? is the number of cubic centimeters of pure acid plus. Now I want the number of cubic centimeters of pure acid coming from the second container. 0.14 y equals the number of cubic centimeters of pure acid in the container that is the resulting solution. Yes, you mean 0.12 multiplied by 50. Yes, I agree. But I have to write it like that first. Okay, very good. So let's solve the system. And then we move on to page 547 at the end of chapter 8. And then at the end of chapter 9. We did everything in chapter 9 last time. Actually, just 9.1, 9.1. That's all we need for this test. But we'll look at a few other inequalities as well. And I hope everyone is really prepared for this test because we spent 2 hours just reviewing from the material for the test. I do recommend multiplying the second equation by 100 if you want. It's not a must. I think it's easier if you do that, but so I copied the first equation and multiplied the second one, both sides by 100. And yes, you can divide by 2 and so on and so forth, but it's the same thing if you multiply the first one by -6. So -6x, -6y equals -300, and 6x plus 14y equals 600. So this is 8y equals 300. So therefore y is, if I divide, okay, cubic centimeters. We'll see in a moment if that's true. And x will be 50 minus 37.5. So is it 12? So the solution appears to be this. Do not trust the solution. Okay? Have to go back and check. Did you check? So 12.5 comma 37.5 is the correct solution. Okay, perfect. Good. So now I would like to, I trust you. I would like to work on a word problem from page 547. The value of a building bought in, this is problem 25 on page 547. The value of a building bought in 2000 continues to increase as time passes. 7 years after the building was bought, which means 2007, it was worth $210,000. 12 years after it was bought, which means 2012, it was worth $270,000. Assuming that this relationship between the number of years past 2000, and the value of the building is linear, Write an equation describing this relationship. Have to establish which one is the independent variable and which one is the dependent variable. And then write what? Two ordered pairs. Very good. So keep in mind, be specific and choose the correct variable as being the independent and the correct variable as being the dependent, and give me those two ordered pairs. Very good. And $12 and $270,000. Very good. We are trying to find the equation of the line. So let's find the equation of the line. And then I would like to graph a piecewise defined function. Okay, anyone give us the slope, if you determined it?
12,000.
The slope cannot be 12,000. It has to have a measurement unit. Exactly. It's a ratio. Remember, I'm not driving at 60 miles. I'm driving at 60 miles per hour. So what is the significance of the slope? What are we told if it's $12,000? What does that mean? That the value of the home increases by $12,000 per year. Perfect. So do not write yourselves a note on the test. I must write measurement unit for anything. If it's an abstract variable, then there is no measurement unit. But in this case, it's dollars per year. Good. So now we are finding the equation of the line, correct? Is it done? Okay. So which equation will you use? We have two. Y equals mx plus b, or y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. Which one will you use? Yes, the point slope form, in which the slope is 12,000, and it doesn't matter which point you want to use. So then I have y minus 210,000 equals 12,000 x minus 7, and I distribute 12,000 x minus 84,000, and I have to come back with plus 210. So tell me if you got this. Plus, right? 210 minus 84. So I have 601. I got this. Is this correct? No? I made a mistake? So 4, 8, 8 from 0 is 2. Yes, 8 from 0 to 2. Very good. Okay, and now final question here. Use this equation to estimate the value of the building in 2018. So in 2018, they want us to find or estimate the value. I said 8 from 0 to, but I wrote 0 instead of writing 2. So what does that mean? It means that x equals 18 years. So y equals 12,000, times 18 plus 126,000. And how much do we get?
342.
How much?
342.
30?
342.
Like 342,000.
Confusing me. It's okay. Good. Let's look at the piecewise defined function then. Ready? I know I have 10 more minutes, but I would like to look at a piecewise defined function. So this is 19 on page 549. F of x is negative 1/2 x for x less than or equal to 0, or 2x. I think we did this problem. I think I probably chose it last time. If we did, then I'll choose another. Did we? Yes? Okay. I can make one up. It doesn't matter. Okay, or 41. We did this. We have this in our notes. That's okay. I can choose another. Let's say 41. G of x equals negative 1/5 x for less than or equal to negative 1, and negative 4x plus 2 for x greater than negative 1. This is what I wanted to go over, and I also wanted to go back to a compounding equality with or and and that's I can't think of anything else we did this semester so far. Okay, so remember, I changed these two in interval notation because I want to find what first.
Domain.
Exactly, that's the key. I can't start without the domain. I can't. So then, what does this mean in interval notation? Very good. What does this mean in interval notation? So now I am able to identify the domain. I was even in that situation, without changing it into interval notation, but it's better for what follows now. So what is the domain of this function? Yes, we have everything. Good. Which value we cannot escape from of x? Which value? Yes, we cannot escape negative 1 because it's a key value. Remember, this is going to the left. I'm going to put it under. And this is going to the right, and it's a parenthesis, and they have to touch because the domain is all real numbers. That's why they touch. Okay, now I need to establish, although I see it, I need to establish which function we use for this and which function we use for this. I need to write it in so I can evaluate it without making an error. Which function is for the first portion? And which function is for the second portion? I know it's silly. It has to be the other one. Otherwise, it will not be a function. Okay, very good. What type of functions are these? Excellent. If they are linear, that's all I need. 2 points, right? Okay, perfect. So let's plug in. Since I don't want to plug in negative 2, I'd rather plug in which number to get a nice number as a result. Or negative 5, exactly. Negative 10 or negative 5. So let's plug in negative 5 and please tell me what we get. Negative 1 over 5 times negative 5 over 1. Very good. Now I have no choice, but I have to plug in negative 1. What do I get? 1/5. Good. Although you should say no, don't plug in negative 1 on the other side, I have to. So what do I get on the other side when I plug in negative 1? 6. When I plug in 0. And now I know that this will be 0 at 1/2. So I'm going to also plug in 1/2 because, as you know, the x and y intercepts are so important. I set this equal to 0 and I got 1/2. So then the answer is 0, right? -4 times 1/2 is -2, and -2 plus 2 will be 0. You have to be very careful when you graph this function. Remember, the two branches can never overlap. Okay, so -5, +1. -1, 1/5 is kind of difficult to present, but it's definitely a full point. It is at -1, and this is clearly a linear function with a negative slope. Remember, you cannot extend -1/5 to the right-hand side of this point, -1, 1/5. On the other side, I have -1, -1 comma 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this has to be an open point. Do you understand why? Because I'm not allowed to plug in -1 in this branch. So therefore, -1, 6, that's why I'm using a parenthesis to remind me that -1 comma 6 has to be an open point. And then I plot 0, 2, which is this. And then I plot 1/2, 0, which is this. Remember not to extend this graph to the left of the threshold. Which part? -1 comma 6, 0 comma 2, 1/2 comma 0. Now this is extended forever, right? So if I were to ask you what is the range of this function, what will you, exactly? I know I have 4 minutes left. Please tell me what would you like me to do, which type of inequality? Compound inequality. Or, and. Okay, I will choose an or, 48, on page 557. So I have x less than 5/7, or x less than 1. I don't have to solve. They're already solved. But I have to graph, or I should graph. 0 in the middle, -infinity, infinity. 5/7 is a number less than 1. I don't really care how much. So it's this interval, 5/7. 1 is very close to it, to the left. And the interval to the left, I meant to say. Okay, so now I need to create the union. Remember, you have the purple interval, and I have this silver interval. And we're not asking ourselves what do we have the same. We're asking ourselves if we are a family or in a partnership, what we can use and enjoy together. Not what we have in common, but what we can enjoy together. That's the or. So x in the interval. Exactly. Exactly. This is what we enjoy together. What if I change this word into an and? What would you say then? To 5/7. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, we still have a minute, or so maybe let's just start.
What did you say it would be if it was N?
I'm sorry?
What did you say it was?
The end will be this, where I have both colors. Here I don't have one color. One of the two is not there. So, okay, let's just start this and I'll stop. Just tell me what to do and then I will stop. 4x minus 1 over 6 less than 5/6. So what will you say about this compound inequality? What would you do? Just explain what you would do to solve it. Multiply both sides, all three sides by 6. And then add 1 to all three sides. And then divide all three sides by 4. That's it. Thank you.